Hello everyone, welcome back to Majorhifi. I'm Luke. Today we have a new product from iFi. This is the Pro iCAN Signature. So this is the follow-up to the original iCAN, the original Pro iCAN. This is the Signature Edition, and there's been a few modifications and whatnot. So we're gonna go ahead and open this up, see what's inside, talk about the design, the components, what's new, what's not, all those things. And yeah, let's go on ahead and get into it. We've got quite a lot of ground to cover, and this thing is really cool. So I'm excited to show you. For starters, we get iFi's iPower Elite as the power source for this. This is an ultra speed, low noise power supply. It's got some heft to it, as you can see. It kind of looks like about the size of a guitar pedal or something like that. It's got a pretty long cable on it here. And then here is the other end of the cable. We also get a few different tips to put on the cable to this if we want to use it with something else. All right, so let's go on ahead and open the main box now. All right, so before we get to the exciting part, let me just show you what else comes in here. So we get an RCA cable and a remote control, wireless remote control that you can use with this. And then that is everything that is included besides, of course, the main event. So here is the Pro iCAN Signature. It is quite a pretty looking amp. As is normal with most iFi amps, if not all of them that I've used, this thing's built like a tank. It is super sturdy. We've got a thick metal frame going on. The whole chassis is very sturdy, and it's, you know, got some weight to it, of course, but that's a good thing with stuff like this. So let's go on ahead and look at the front section here. To start with, we've got two 3-pin XLRs balanced over here, and then in the middle, we have a XLR 4-pin balanced. We also have a 3.5 millimeter single-ended output over here, and then a 4.4 millimeter balanced output over here. Here we have our input selection knob, which sort of clicks in here to the different areas and settings. We've also got our X bass setting, which I'm gonna get into later, but this is the knob used to adjust it. You can pick between obviously off, and then you have 10 Hertz, 20 Hertz, and 40 Hertz, and this also clicks into place. And then we have the 3D holographic setting, which once again, we can turn off, or we can have it at 30 or 60-30 or 60-90, and we'll get into that also later. And then we have the volume knob here, which has a nice amount of resistance on it, which is great for not making accidental adjustments, as I'm hopefully kind of illustrating here. It doesn't just, like, if I kind of, you know, brush up against it, it's not just gonna go by itself. It needs a bit of, like, you know, kind of torque. Nothing major, but enough to get it going, which is good because you don't want to blast your ears out because you accidentally brushed up against the volume knob, of course. We've got the gain switch here, and then we also have the operation mode switch here. We can go between solid state mode, tube mode, and tube plus mode. If you switch to either of the tube modes, you're going to need to let the tube over here heat up for about 45 seconds or so before it's able to be used. So on the back here, we've got two 3-pin XLR balanced inputs. We also have two 3-pin XLR balanced outputs. We then have 3 unbalanced RCA inputs, along with an unbalanced RCA output. Over here, we have this port which allows us to link the iCAN Signature to the iFi Pro IESL. It should not be used to connect this to any other equipment that's stated explicitly in the description in the manual, so just use this for the IESL, nothing else. Here we have the DC loop out, which can be used for other iCAN add-ons, and then of course, we have the DC power supply input. It's 15 volt, 4 amps. And that is everything going on the iCAN. So the iCAN is meant to be used as a reference class analog headphone / stereo amplifier. Today we're going to be talking about it mainly in the context of a headphone amplifier per the, you know, general topic and subject matter of this channel. It has customizable bass boosts and sound expansion like I talked about, X bass and 3D holographic. We're gonna talk about how those sound. Some of the internal features on the iCAN Signature are a 6-way motorized ALPS type volume control with 4 tracks adjusting volume and 2 others for monitoring volume control operation. We also have an audio circuit developed with iFi's tube state design. There is full integration of the 3D holographic function into the signal circuit, which is meaning that there is no use of DSP in the linked AD/DA conversion and no additional active elements. If disabled, the passive elements of the analog matrix on the iCAN Signature are removed from the circuit, meaning that the signal remains unaffected. In terms of what's new about the Signature, this has a revised circuit design, upgraded power supply circuits, hand-selected and matched tubes in the output stage, a 4.4 millimeter Pentacon balanced headphone output, and a new remote control. So there's your rundown on the iCAN Signature. Let's go on ahead and talk about how this puppy sounds. All right, so unsurprisingly, this offers a lot of tube warmth, a sort of vintage sound to it in many ways, which makes a lot of sense. It is a tube preamp. I tested this with a variety of headphones, including the Focal Clear MG. I tested it with my favorite, the Dan Clark Aeon 2 open back. I also used the DT1990 Pro, the Hi-Fi Man Ananda, and the Audeze LCD2. All of which, output-wise, were driven to perfection. This thing says that it can drive any headphone in the world. I say that tracks, at least in my experience. I had no problems driving anything. Unsurprisingly, you might need a bit more volume if you use, for example, the 3.5mm output, but that is nothing out of the ordinary. This amp definitely can be transparent if you want it to, but if you use the different modes, it can definitely lean into kind of softening the brightness, giving a bit more organic texture to sound. It definitely demuddies and tightens up low end a lot, which I really appreciate. And overall, just offers a more kind of glued, melded sound to music that makes it a lot more cohesive a lot of the time and really brings things together, especially for headphones that maybe can be a bit disjointed at times. For me, the iCAN signature gave me sonic differences that I could appreciate and enjoy, but it didn't modulate or interfere so much with my headphones that they started to sound kind of uncomfortable and unfamiliar. All right, so I'm gonna go through the different modes in terms of the operational modes, the X-Bass and the 3D holographic sound, and give you a rundown of what I experienced with those. All right, so for operational modes, mode number 1 is solid state mode. I found this to be the most transparent mode, unsurprisingly. I found that the solid state mode allowed me to get the most bang for my buck out of the X-Bass, oftentimes, not by miles, but it seemed to give it a little bit of extra room to breathe. And this was kind of my default at times, the solid state was, because it definitely just had the most versatility. And like I said, it was the most transparent, and that's something that I like. The tube modes, though, I really enjoyed too. So there's tube mode and tube plus mode. Those are two different modes, not to be confused with one another. So the tube mode definitely warmed up the high end, but kept it pretty crisp at the end of the day. I would say that this mode was better fitted for some headphones than others. Some don't really need that extra warmth on the high end. Others can really benefit from it for sure. I found, for example, the Clear MG really benefited from both tube modes. The added warmth on the high end was definitely sort of carried down to the bottom end also on the tube mode, but I felt like it had a bit of a looser feel, which allowed the punch of percussion to come through a bit more, which I liked when I wanted that sort of chest feel. But at times I felt like I wanted a little bit more containment, in which case I would switch over to tube plus mode, which I felt kind of rounded off those peaks just a tad more and kind of kept things a little bit more contained while still warming them up in the low end. For me, the tube plus mode probably was my favorite. It also warmed up the high end, but kind of got rid of some of that crispness in a way, more so just smoothed it out more, and I liked that sound a lot. It made it a lot silkier and a little bit, didn't sacrifice detail, but it didn't feel quite as sort of trying to preserve the shine maybe as tube mode was. Once again, these are all subtle differences to keep in mind. None of these things are extreme, but they are noticeable. So the tube plus mode just felt the warmest, the most kind of mixture of vintage and clean and kind of colored. I just felt like it was probably the least transparent, but I guess that's maybe just the most interesting to me. As much as I did like using solid state mode to get transparency, consistency, versatility, I really do at the end of the day enjoy seeing kind of what unique edge an amplifier can offer, and tube plus mode to me was the most unique edge that I got out of this. All right, so for X-Bass mode, we've got 3 options. We've got 10 Hertz, 20 Hertz, and 40 Hertz. So 10 Hertz, unsurprisingly, was quite subtle. It was pretty hard to detect with some headphones, and some headphones were just not able to take full advantage of it, which is, once again, not very surprising. The headphones that could take advantage of it were able to give a bit more physicality. It's not going to be a sort of overtly audible difference. It offered some more sort of realism and cinematic feel from music, but it didn't give an obvious increase in like any recognizable timbres, and that makes sense for me for a 10 Hertz boost. For 20 Hertz, this mode is also subtle, but it's definitely more audible and obvious than the 10 Hertz. This made a pretty understated boost, which I liked, but it was definitely evident but not overwhelming, and definitely never kind of sacrificed balance or cleanliness or made any sort of overbearing low end at all. It just definitely gave me a really even keel, kind of like I said, just sitting sort of underneath the mix kind of sound. I mean, 20 Hertz is very low down. 40 hertz, I'll be honest, was my favorite. I guess I'm a man of extremities. 40 hertz is definitely the most obvious. It reminds me the most of the X bass or the bass boost I've seen on other iFi amps where they don't have the customizability, so just sort of the automatic, like on the Zendak V2, you just push a button, just bass on, bass off. And this 40 hertz boost sounds the most similar to those kind of just like one-size-fits-all bass boosts I've seen on other amps. It definitely is better fitted for some songs than others, some headphones for others. It's a bit maybe less versatile than the 10 or 20 hertz because it is a bit more extreme. 40 hertz is a bit more of an obvious boost. All right, so the 3D holographic function. This was quite interesting to me. It seems to be a bit more aimed at speakers than headphones. Don't quote me on that, that's just what I got from reading through the manual and from using it. It seemed to be a bit more speaker focused. Of course, they say you can use it for your headphones, for recordings that maybe aren't wide enough or setups that have some limit in terms of width. It's meant to restore a recording to its original sound stage that could have been spatially distorted during mixing, mastering, production, all that kind of stuff. And maybe it does this in a way that sometimes you might not want, you know what I mean? So sometimes you don't want to hear the original soundstage, I feel like. Let me see if I'm making sense here. Basically, if you have two speakers that are maybe limited in terms of how far apart they can be, and they're creating a sense of, kind of narrowness about the sound, this 3D function, it can help to offset that and give you a wider sound than is actually being created to kind of create an illusion in a way, I suppose. And when used maybe with headphones that are limited in their sound stage, or with recordings that are limited, it can do something. However, if you're gonna use this 3D function with your open back headphones with a mix that's already wide, it actually can kind of limit the soundstage inwards a bit. I don't think this is an accident. I think they're aware that it can do this. When you use it for something where there's already a ton of width, it kind of, I think, maybe just isn't as applicable, and it tends to sort of drop out the middle a bit and like cut down on the sort of low end of the sides, which would make sense for widening something. But for certain headphones, it just felt like it actually made things sound narrower. So it's not a one size fits all. It's probably not meant to be, of course. So like, for example, on the Aeon 2 open back, on the Clear MG, even the Ananda at times, it just didn't feel like it was offering me expanded soundstage, just more so reformatted and adjusted and kind of given a new perspective. And at times I actually did prefer it, but it wasn't something that I was using exclusively to get more width. I was just sometimes using it to get kind of a new perspective or a new format of the sound. So I think that this mode is definitely maybe better fitted for speakers or abnormally narrow headphones or abnormally narrow mixes. That's what I would say. All right, so yeah, those are my thoughts on the iCAN signature. I think this is a worthy upgrade over the original iCAN. It definitely has obviously many of the same features, but iFi is of course a fan of kind of perfecting their old creations, and I appreciate that a lot, and this feels like a definite upgrade, like there has been improvements made, and it definitely still remains the same great amplifier it was before, but just that much better. I think the sound of this is really fun to play with. The tube warmth that is possible to achieve is stellar. It is so clean, and it definitely tightens up handling very well. It's well built. It's definitely got a really, really fine-tuned internal, mechanism going on, and just a very thought out amplifier. It really keeps in mind kind of, I feel like, what people are looking for, and it offers you a ton of options with inputs and outputs and the ability to expand it to other iFi accessories and whatnot. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the iFi iCAN signature. I will be back soon with some more videos and reviews. Please let me know in the comments if you have any other questions about this amp in particular, or other amps, or anything that you want to know. Just let me know and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And yeah, I'll be back very soon. And until next time, happy listening.